It's November 24th, 1992, otherwise known as Sonic Tuesday, and we're at Toys R Us, a huge day in gaming history. It was the first fully organized release of a video game ever. Before this campaign, games would just randomly show up at stores at irregular intervals, with no dedicated release day. But before these eager fans could race home with their copies, before the $10 million marketing blitz that created this moment, before the game could even exist, a small team of Japanese and American developers had come together in a California office to create something unprecedented. This is the story of how two radically different cultures clashed and collaborated to create one of the most influential games of the 16-bit era. From the sun-drenched shores of Emerald Hill to the secrets of Mystic Caves, even far out into the cold vastness of the Death Egg, we're going to explore how each zone was crafted, what inspired their design, and the fascinating stories behind their creation. It's time to explore Sonic 2. Following Sonic 1's smash success, it'd be only obvious to begin work on the sequel. Yet that wasn't what was happening at Sega HQ. Yuji Naka, a key figure behind the Hedgehog's inception, was at war with the higher-ups. While the info that's floating around is mostly secondhand, it seems Naka was upset with their seniority-based pay policy, and his bosses weren't happy with the fact it took him longer than initially intended to program the game. Feeling unappreciated and underpaid, Yuji Naka left Sega shortly after Sonic 1 released. However, the blue blur's spines would find its way back into him through Mark Cerny, a man who was something of a prodigy in the gaming industry. He had gotten his start at Atari in 1982 at the young age of 17, where only 2 years later he'd create his first huge success, Marble Madness, a game where players used a trackball to gently guide a glass marble through M.C. Escher-style environments. The following year in 1985 is when he would join Sega, after a failed stint of trying to start his own business. His career took a significant turn when Sega's president, Hayao Nakayama, invited him to Japan to work on Master System software. Despite initially planning only a 6-month stint, Cerny remained in Japan for over 3 years, where he learned the language and worked on an interesting project, the Sega Scope 3D glasses, which use shutters on both lenses to produce a 3D effect. Some of these actually would be ported later in the Sega 3D Fukoku archives 1 and 2 for the 3DS. During his time in Japan making these titles was where he met Yuji Naka and many other employees of Sega. In 1990, he finally decided it was time to head back to the US, and as luck would have it, simultaneously, Sega leadership were looking to get a major studio going in the country. Hisashi Suzuki, Sega's head of research and development, announced plans to send a group of young, experienced developers to the US. This all hit a big snag when Sega applied for visas and they failed to qualify. The request failed because Sega incorrectly applied for O1 expert visas, which are specifically designated for nationally or internationally recognized individuals with a record of extraordinary achievements. On top of this, due to applying for such a large number at once, they were barred from requesting any others temporarily. This forced Sega to change their plans, sending only Mark Cerny to the US and having him hire American developers for now, instead of bringing over the Japanese team as originally intended. He arrived in San Jose, California and got to work. Their first project assigned was a video game adaptation of Dick Tracy for the Sega Genesis, based on the 1990 film, though the game wouldn't hit till 91, which, yes, hurt its sales. During the development of this, and the following year's Kid Chameleon, the American staff was filled out, totaling 15 employees, even requiring a move to a larger facility in Palo Alto. While development took place, Mark Cerny would often visit Japan to report on the happenings back in America. It was during such a session he found out something surprising. I'll let the man himself explain the situation.
This was the summer of 1991. I'd been setting up and running Sega Technical Institute, so I was in Japan quite a bit. I was shocked to hear that Yuji Naka left, so I found out where he lived and dropped by. His apartment was in a rather dingy building, but it was perfect for him because it was just a few minutes' walk from the office. At any rate, I heard his long list of issues and started thinking about how to resolve them. And of course, financial was part of that. After the first Sonic shipped, He quit. He was tired of working at Sega. One big issue was that even though Sonic was immediately a big hit, he got a lot of grief for having missed the schedule. He took 14 months rather than 10, I believe. And the headcount. Total headcount was 4.5 people rather than 3, I believe. I think he also felt unappreciated on many levels, including financially. I believe his base salary at the time was about $30,000, though he did get bonuses.
Before this, he had already gotten the director of the first game, Hirokazu Yasuhara, to come to STI. Now with Yuji Naka, Mark had 2 of the main team on board. It's worth noting for Yuji Naka's case, getting to work in America was an ambition of his after he got to visit Silicon Valley right after the success of Sonic 1. The Japanese staff finally arrived after a long delay in September 1991. However, another strange twist appeared.
They were ready to start work on their next project, so I asked marketing the obvious question: would you like another Sonic? Bizarrely, the response was, and again I kid you not, no, it's much too soon. So we found another game to make, and in November, as we were getting started, marketing came back and said, oops, we do need that game and we need it now. So the team lost 2 months out of an 11-month schedule.
As a wise man once said, what were they thinking? Time was short, and the road would be filled with challenges. But either way, the adventure begins. The game opens with a familiar look in Emerald Hill Zone, the way the grass is shaped into thick, defined spears, the distant ocean, the basil and pine palette dotted with hints of pink and purple flowers. Yes, it's a variation on Green Hell from the first title. Video game sequels tend to echo their predecessors, much like a cover band playing the greatest hits, with slightly different instruments. The familiarity of the first game was so pronounced that in early prototypes, they didn't even bother with the pretense. They just called it Green Hill Zone outright. Emerald Hill isn't too different in layout either in set prototypes. Seems they knew what they wanted early on with this one. Also, the zone's graphics were made by Gina Ishiwatari, who also crafted the graphics for its older brother. Unlike Green Hill, which was made last after they figured out what their goals were with the blue blur, Emerald Hill was the first one finished. The answer was obvious. Introduce players to the game's momentum thrills with a gentle learning curve. Every slope is calculated to give you just enough speed to make the next jump. Every badnik placed exactly where it might teach you something useful, usually about the importance of paying attention. Every secret path promising rewards for the curious. Everything about it is just more refined, unlike Sonic 1's uneven terrain, which, while they serve their use. Sonic 2's slopes are far more purposeful. There's no way you wouldn't understand momentum by the end of even Act 1. Right at the beginning is a straightaway with a curve to launch Sonic upwards. One can even jump off it backwards to propel right into a power shield and a coconut's badnik, a monkey who throws fruit of the same name from on high, encouraging the player to jump on up and make use of this game's greater aerial movement. Coconuts would come back off and on throughout the series in various forms. And of interesting note, in Japan they are called Ai, sharing a name with a certain simian who would later make rolling inside balls his career path. The 2 other badniks appearing here are the Buzzer and the Masher, who do have almost exact analogs from Green Hill, with the former flying overhead as a bee shooting a projectile, and the latter being a piranha that will jump from underneath bridges. But I don't want to make it sound like everything is lifted from its predecessor. The checkered soil is traded for Jenga-shaped stones. The background looks out over a large field of flowers before a shimmering ocean. The palm trees are no longer pseudo-3D, yet still palmy. The real showstoppers are the 3D corkscrews, loop-de-loops that apparently got bored with going up and decided to try sideways instead. The 3-dimensional marvels featured throughout the game were modeled by Tim Skelly and Peter Moravec. Tim Skelly, prior to STI, worked for the company Cinematronics, which Sega published various titles for. The most notable entry Tim worked on was an arcade game titled Rip-Off, a shooter that is considered the first game to ever have cooperative multiplayer. The biggest difference with Sonic 1 you'll notice is Sonic himself. Unlike the first game, where top speed was reached by merely holding a direction for a second or two, here the momentum is in full swing. Speed needs to be earned. You'll need to run and build at pace by either having a straightaway or jumping over obstacles till he gradually reaches full cycle. Jumping builds this faster, which is why you'll see me do it more often. Slopes have a greater effect on our hero's momentum as well. Better have some built-up speed when heading skywards, and when going downwards, hold on to your gloves. The most unique traversal tool, however, is the new Spin Dash. Sonic 2 is its introduction, and this move completely changed the game. Hold down, tap jump, and Sonic and Tails will rev up like a tire doing a burnout, and get an instant boost from 0. This allowed the team to create more vertical level designs throughout the game, since there is little reason to backtrack and try to gain momentum. Loops are no longer a hassle. In addition, it counts as an attack. Anything that wouldn't hurt the duo while curled up will simply be destroyed, while Sonic breezes right through. Every path holds a surprise. Within the waterfalls is an extra life. Atop the loops is an invincibility. Everything is tightly constructed with clear visuals to make the player ever more curious, and shows off how much more confident the devs had become. This is reflected in what changes were made over time to the prototypes. The Nick Arcade build, named so because it is believed to be the one shown off on the Nickelodeon show called Nick Arcade. What else would it be? Actress Melissa Joan Hart played this stage a bit in a competition to collect 20 rings. Taking a look at the prototypes ourselves, it's easy to see over time things were smoothed out a lot. Spike pits were removed, extra ramps were adjusted to give the player more room to maintain speed, floating platforms were placed over gaps in the upper areas for assistance. A lot more secrets were added. The aforementioned extra life is in the waterfall. What was already a solid level got ironed out for a perfect intro zone. In the Sonic GM strategy guide, Yuji Naka shared where his inspiration came from for the stage's title.
Visually speaking, through all 3 games, we always start with an island. At the time, we were developing in San Francisco, and south of there was a town called Emerald Hill. We were doing a location test at a shopping center there when we saw it. We thought we'd name it Green Hill, so we decided let's use it in this game.
Proof that sometimes inspiration strikes in the most literal ways possible. The zone concludes with a boss fight against the drill egg that feels about as challenging as a warm-up exercise, with Robotnik driving back and forth like someone learning to parallel park in slow motion. The only surprise comes is if you let him escape with 7 hits, at which point he throws his drill in what might be charitably described as a token effort at difficulty. Thankfully, they do evolve to be far more challenging than the first game. Yet despite, or perhaps because of its familiar trappings, Emerald Hill Zone succeeds brilliantly at its primary goal, showing players that while this might look like the same game they loved before, it's been polished to a shine, showing everyone this is ready to be bigger and better. Chemical Plant Zone arrives like an industrial symphony conducted by someone who thought more pipes was always the answer. It's a sort of place that makes environmentalists reach for their protest signs and the factory inspectors write their resignation letters. Despite its frequent reappearances, or perhaps because of them, in modern Sonic games, it's earned its iconic status through sheer architectural audacity. It's a beautiful looking stage that makes an immediate impression with its cityscape filled with beautiful warm reds that contrast against the factory foreground of cold steel and blues. Artist Yasushi Yamaguchi did an amazing job keeping control of lots of small details that make it feel high-tech. The screw holes, the tubes that appear to be carrying liquid, the valves and pipes that break up the slabs of steel. There's even blinking lights that change color on sliding platforms. It feels very man-made, as it should, like Robotnik put it together with his army of bots. It's not the Star Trek kind of sleek and futuristic. Very industrial. The zone shows off even better than Emerald Hill how they settled into Sonic's design philosophy. Right at the start is a long winding road Sonic and Tails can gain full speed. That finishes with a loop, and you better be then react to that one. This is the first time in the series you're challenged to earn that speed. Not with an enemy, but this bumper will send Sonic on an entirely different path if you don't jump over it. It's a great way to reward multiple plays, because if you jump this bumper or even take the upper path at the very beginning before any of this, you might not interact with Chemical Plant's signature gimmick, the high-speed transport tubes. These tubes whisk players across the map like some sort of deranged postal system. Don't worry, this doesn't turn into a maze game, it's a one-way trip. Although every tube splits off, and you might be wondering, why doesn't it change lanes when pushing a direction on the D-pad? It actually decides based on the time when entering the hole. An even number sending the character one way, or an odd the opposite. It's interesting how randomization often isn't so random in games. It's easy to gain so much speed in the zone you fly off screen. It's actually possible to go so fast the game's collision detection stops working, and Sonic will fly right through walls without you even knowing it. a mechanic taken advantage of by speedrunners throughout the entire game. Chemical Plant is infamous for this due to the fact that right at the beginning of Act 2 is this ginormous ramp. This is also where you can jump to other routes, but it's very difficult to resist that speedy thrill. There's another first as zone debuts, and that's the speed boosters. These sling Sonic or Tails off instantly at top speed. They would be used sparingly throughout the 2D games, but become a staple when going into the third dimension. The zone's most notorious pink liquid in Act 2 has ended more gaming sessions than power outages and bitch mommy's dinner calls combined. The blocks move in a sort of circle formation rather slowly. When you're approaching it, if you don't happen to take the higher path, you can be placed at a disadvantage. Missing a jump can make life miserable. But like the Labyrinth Zone boss in Sonic 1, patience and a steady hand can win the day. Or skill, that works too. However, this section can be entirely avoided by taking a well-hidden secret route. A bit less than halfway through the act, there's a ramp you can gain some big height from if you're ready for it. It comes just after a loop. Launch yourself as high as possible and press forward. You'll know you're in the right place because there will be some rotating blocks in the path. After this is a speed boost. It's a trap to send you back down to the water, so jump over it. Above you will be a block that looks like a caged area. You want to jump into this. Yes, it looks the same as all the other tiles in this act, but this one can be passed through, and no, there isn't any hint about it. It's a bit of a tricky jump. Run ahead a bit, turn around, and jump off the raised area in the road ahead towards this. Now you can cruise through the high route to the boss, water-free. The boss is of course easy, but I find it amusing how his gimmick is just dumping a chemical on Sonic and Tails. The guy who can invent anything is just trying to drop a glass of water on his enemy. The only thing to really watch out for is, again, if you're playing with Tails following, he can make you fall through Robotnik if he hits him first, this time to your death if the pit is open underneath. Chemical Plant's early placement creates a difficulty spike that feels like someone accidentally shuffled the level order cards. Yet somehow this industrial nightmare has become one of Sonic's most beloved zones, proving that sometimes the best memories come from the places that try to drown you in pink chemicals. So they had to leap into action right away on Sonic 2. Yuji Naka requested for there to be a two-player mode, something he had wanted in the original game and a requirement for him coming back for this title. For this, a second character would be required, unless they wanted two Sonics fighting again like in Eraser. Various artists got to work on character concepts. Ones we know of are a bird, a kiwi, which, yes, is a bird, and a turtle. The artwork for Boomer the Turtle had been shared publicly by his artist, Craig Stitt. It appears the idea at the time was going for more of a team dynamic, where Boomer could help Sonic across gaps with his jet propulsion, and likewise Sonic would have to help him upright if he was flipped on his back by a badnik. While interesting in theory, it's probably for the better they decided to keep things simple and focus on what made the first game great. The character who would be chosen, Tails, was designed by Yasushi Yamaguchi, who took over as chief artist since Oto Oshima, Sonic and Robotnik's original designer, would stay in Japan and go on to direct a certain CD-based game that did use time travel. Yamaguchi will be incredibly important in learning the history of Sonic 2, as he is the only person from the Japanese side of the team to be open about the game's development over the years. Yamaguchi was kind enough to reveal the origin story of Tails on Twitter, November 20th, 2022, in a thread going under his classic handle, Judy Totoya. Yuji Naka had requested a cute fox character like Kitsune from Urusei Yatsura in order to appeal to Japanese. Originally, he was going to draw this fox with only a single tail. However, upon seeing Meow's design from Phantasy Star, he was inspired to give him two, after thinking about how they could turn like a propeller for speed and eventually flight. As a rather famous story goes, Yamaguchi named the fox character Miles Per Hour, a sort of portmanteau of the phrase miles per hour and the word power, fitting for a franchise focus on speed. However, most everyone else on the team preferred the name Tails, as it was more simple and direct. Yamaguchi was steadfast in his resolve to have him be named Miles, and snuck this title into all the artwork, and so the name eventually found its way into the game proper. Forever then on, Miles officially became his real name, with Tails being a nickname Sonic gave him. So, because I know this will be brought up, the book Console Wars by Blake J. Harris features another story on how the naming came to be. It's an elaborate tale about how the higher-ups at Sega of America did not like the name Miles, and tried to convince the developers to change it with no success. Until one day, marketing director Al Nielsen and product manager Madeline Schroeder wrote an origin story called The Renaming of Miles Monotail. Nielsen went to the developers with Vice President Shinobu Toyoda, and could tell no one was happy to see him, but then pulled out the story and read it to them. I won't read the entire passage, but the story of it is, Tails is bullied by other foxes for having two tails. Sonic showed him he could be special by training him to run fast, using his tails like a propeller, and eventually he could even fly. Then he bestowed upon him the nickname of Tails. The book then goes on to say, and I quote, "The members of Sonic Team, who'd been planning on hating every word out of Nielsen's mouth, found themselves entranced by the story. One developer was even moved to tears. After allowing a moment to let it sink in, Naka walked up to Nielsen and said, 'You may call him Tails.'" Although moved, several of Sonic Team's other members remained unconvinced, sensing that the momentary camaraderie was about to fizzle away. Toyota blurted out a compromise. How about his name is Miles Prower, but Sonic calls him by the nickname Tails? This suggestion managed to do the trick. The fox would go by Tails, but Sonic Team would take solace in the fact that in a fictional filing cabinet somewhere, there was a birth certificate with the name Miles Prower. But I just can't believe it. At the beginning of the book, the author's note itself says, "In certain situations, details of settings and description have been altered, reconstructed, or imagined." So I don't know what's real or fake. At best, it's a very unreliable source despite the hundreds of interviews the author did due to the way it's portrayed. The most major in broad strokes happened, I suppose, like Al Nielsen maybe wrote the US manual's origin story, but nothing about this matches up with the info I gathered elsewhere. Any searching about this supposed encounter just goes back to the book's own passages with no further sources. Also, why would his name ever be Miles Monotail? He always had two tails. However, one aspect of this all is true. For sure, the Japanese and American team were not working together well. Aquatic Ruins stands in contrast to Chemical Plant. It's a beautiful forest taking over a lost civilization, like a stark answer to the Industrial Revolution. Bright green foliage and majestic waterfalls are everywhere, among the Roman ruins, where hollowed logs replace long collapsed bridges. It's also more straightforward than the last zone, with the paths being more obvious. No speed tubes here, but the best part of this all? It's like the most well-designed water zone there is. With only a bit of skill, you can play both acts without ever getting a toe wet. That's right. The team had realized that water works better as a sort of punishment for bad play. In fact, the underwater section tends to be even more difficult due to the falling pillars, and having far less time to react to the arrow traps flying across the stage. In fact, those falling pillars can push Sonic or Tails right through the stage. The arrows are the most dastardly traps, seemingly traveling endlessly across the entire zone and will hit Sonic or Tails out of nowhere. Their placement can also be very deceiving. Look at it firing behind the foliage and hitting me in the loop. Grounder badniks also just emerge from the walls and tackle Sonic. And yes, this is indeed the same bot that would later achieve minor celebrity status in the weekday cartoon Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog. Those leaves are beautiful. However, did you know they can also be useful? If Sonic touches an enemy while the leaves are in the foreground, enemy collision detection will not work, so it's pretty much always safe to run straight through this part. Aquatic Ruins until late in development was actually called Neo Green Hill Zone, all the way up to beta build September 22nd. The title card is even in place in one of them, although the hill glitches out, loading some bubble sprites in the word's place. The title would be revived years later in Sonic Advance's opening stage. The boss for this zone actually has an interesting gimmick. Sonic and Tails are locked between two totem poles that rise from the ground. Robotnik flies above with a giant hammer and hits the totems, making an arrow go across the screen. Said arrow gets stuck on the opposite side. Robotnik is just out of reach by normal means of jumping, so, you guessed it, that stuck arrow becomes a platform to reach the Egg Mobile. It's a fantastic concept that remixes past elements and even allows some player creativity. It's a little sad this whole thing can be so easily avoided by simply standing on top of one of the totems as they rise. This lets Sonic freely bounce on Robotnik till he explodes. Aquatic Ruins manages to tell its story of nature reclaiming civilization, without ever having to spell it out, proving that the best narrative doesn't need words. Just well-placed waterfalls and the occasional arrow trap. It stands as one of Sonic 2's more thoughtful zones, even if most of that thought went to figuring out how to make water levels less wet. Casino Night Zone, at least in my opinion, is the most influential of all the sequel stages, with its gameplay gimmick of a pinball and casino hybrid, would become a staple in many future games. Yes, Spring Yard was technically the genesis of it, but it had few of the actual elements, and we can see the evolution bigly with its changes during development. It morphed the most of any zone in the game, starting off with a shocking pink and green filled stage against a dark backdrop. Oof. It flickers within the eyes and makes a man dizzy. I'm going to assume it was never finished, because Leiko Kodama was the artist for it at this time, and she did the absolutely majestic Starlight Zone from Sonic 1. So we know this lady has taste. The reason it was overhauled was due to her not knowing what a casino looked like. The stage looked more like playing cards or a carnival, something like Spring Yard, though there is no evidence to prove she worked on that stage. Yasushi Yamaguchi took over and redesigned the art after the team paid a visit to Las Vegas, gone were the carnival colors, replaced by golden pathways and neon signs that would make Vegas itself blush with pride. The background became a glittering cityscape, the kind that makes wallets spontaneously empty themselves. All for the sake of an extremely original concept. You can gamble right in the stage for more points or rings. Often you're tasked with slinging Sonic or Tails off pinball flippers into the roulette, where you can win anywhere from 2 rings with a single bar, all the way up to 150 with 3 jackpots. But like Kenny Rogers said, it's important to know when to fold them, because 3 Robotniks will take away 100 rings. With enough patience, this is the stage you can actually hit the cap of 999 rings in, and stack up those extra lives. I really like the look of the roulette areas. It stands out so much because it's just a flat blue and yellow color with red borders. Brilliantly simple solution. This stage is far more about the extravaganza. The biggest evidence of this, there is only a single type of badnik, the crawler, who is tailor-made to fit this zone, since they will simply bounce the heroes away with their shield unless directly attacked from behind, working to encourage the player to change their thinking. Really, any challenge in this stage comes from it being tricky to navigate. There's lots of rolling around half-pipes, bouncing off bumpers, and making slingshots with flippers. Casino Night is a huge zone, with lots of paths through it. By far it feels the most maze-like, and I believe it's due to the fact you're always getting views of the pathways you're not on, just above or below. The team even included actual elevators to ride up or down. The boss battle fittingly takes place in a pinball area. This time Robotnik is flying the egg catcher, and tries to touch our furry pals with electricity. Yeah, he doesn't actually try to catch them with the claws as the name would imply. He can also drop little exploding pellets. Hitting him can be tricky here, because even when he comes low, the flippers and bumpers will block you from attacking him. Hopping on the flippers and slinging yourself is an option, but is overkill, and Sonic is more likely to enter his walk animation upon touching the ceiling, which just results in losing rings. The most consistent method is to spin dash and jump off the wall back towards Robotnik. Optimally, you land on the center bumper and use that to hop between him and attacking the catcher. It's easy to see why the casino scene became synonymous with Sonic. It just isn't used in most other series, and it ties so well into his most basic gameplay design, curling into a ball, collecting rings, and taking advantage of momentum. This perfect blend of spectacle, gameplay innovation, and distinctive theming makes Casino Night Zone not just a highlight of Sonic 2, but a blueprint for future level design. Hey, someone showed up, so let's try that 2-player mode. I'm sure most are familiar with the sort of co-op mode where Tails follows Sonic, and the second player can move the fox around. But they will always be left behind other than at bosses, as the camera follows Sonic only. However, on the main menu, scroll down once on the title screen, and you'll find yourself able to select 4 different options to compete on. Emerald Hill, Casino Night, and Mystic Cave are available to play with both acts. They are largely the same in layout, with a few hazards removed here or there to try and save resources. The 4th option is special stages. The standard zones work as a race to the finish, with player 1 controlling Sonic and 2 Tails, Each player gets a proper dedicated split screen thanks to the fact this is one of the few games to use the Mega Drive's interlaced mode, which doubled the vertical resolution, allowing both screens to fit on the TV. After playing the 2 acts of your chosen stage, a third round appears, which is always a special stage. In this one, both players race down an auto-scrolling half-pipe, competing to collect the most rings over 3 rounds. Jumping will switch the position of both players, so if you're really competitive, you'll be doing that a lot. We'll be covering special stages more extensively in their own section later in the video. The spice that makes this multiplayer mode more interesting is the power-ups. More boxes have been added around the zones, and you'll notice they all have question marks. That's because they are randomized. They can be the usual shield, ring, or invincibility boxes from single player, but there is also 2 new ones. A Robotnik box that will make the player take damage, or a teleporter that switches Sonic and Tails locations. That one can completely turn around a match. There is also lives, with Sonic and Tails each having their own pool. If either player loses them all, it's an instant lost. But interestingly, they can also be found in boxes, and they might be your opponents. I guess now is a good time to mention in this game Tails cannot fly. Well, he will fly back to Sonic if left behind in single player, but the player cannot activate Tails' flight ability no matter what, even if playing as him solo. This multiplayer mode is likely the main reason for leaving it out, since it would be a huge advantage. There was even exclusive music designed for these 2-player zones. Mystic Caves holds a special little secret we'll discover later on. The graphics can be a bit crunchy with the screens being squished down, and on a small screen can get rather cramped. The main issue is there is a ton of lag, particularly if someone gets hit and loses their rings. But there is seemingly random spikes of it off and on. I'm quite sure the invincibility is also a culprit in this mode. It for sure adds an extra layer of difficulty, causing someone to miss a key jump or just run into obstacles. In spite of that, it's still a fun time and a bit of a technical achievement getting this running. Something fun I do back in the day with my brother or a friend is go into casino night together and just hit the slots, ignoring the competition aspect. And you know what? I bet that was an intention of the developers. In general, the Americans were far more green with less experience than the Japanese devs, who had plenty of games under their belts, and they showed in how business was run. Many of the meetings were done in Japanese. Mark Cerny did his best to bridge the gap for the rest of the team sitting there confused, but they were unable to effectively participate. He had hoped the foreign devs could work as mentors to the Americans like they were to him, but things didn't seem to be working out that way.
The Japanese and American staff could barely talk to each other, and though I was hoping a mentor-mentee relationship would develop between the more senior Japanese members and junior American members, it never happened.
There was much cultural clash as well. Work culture in Japan is famous for being different from America. Us Americans just show up for the 9 to 5 and skedaddle home. But the Japanese? No way. They bring everything to their job. It's reported they went so far as to sleep in the office and work at all hours. Whether one views this as a healthy mindset or not is beside the point. It was building contempt within the team. In fact, the atmosphere was said to be so lax before the arrival of the Japanese team that STI notably didn't even use version control to prevent overwriting key files. They apparently just had to depend on asking each other if it was safe and really stay in sync. A difference in language, experience, and culture. This wasn't just a gap that needed bridging, it was a chasm. Multiple folks from the American side were blunt when speaking of Yuji Naka in particular. Artist Tim Skelly stated in an interview with Sega 16,
"Everyone attached to Sonic 2 ultimately worked for Yuji Naka. I think Naka would have been much happier if he was working with an all-Japanese team, but just because of the language barrier and some cultural differences. Imagine how you would have felt at the time if you were creating a Superman comic book and you were given a manga artist to do the artwork. The differences weren't as extreme as that, but you get my point."
Yet in another interview he did with a Sonic Retro user named Ice Knight, he said things weren't too bad overall.
"We were all STI. At the time, Naka was an outcast from Sega Japan. He wouldn't have been working for any Sega division anywhere if Mark Cerny hadn't intervened. However, that doesn't mean that there wasn't a split. Mostly it just involved the usual difficulties of working with talented creators. I don't think culture had much to do with it. There was quite a lot of discord within STI, but not amongst the Americans and Japanese working on Sonic. It was strictly a middle management thing."
Another artist, Craig Stitt, has even harsher things to say in Retro Gamer magazine issue 175.
Yeah, Naka was an arrogant pain in the ass. He had no interest in working with any of the Americans.
There is even internet rumors that go as far as having Naka diving over a cubicle to try and strangle Cerny. Such rumors are of course unconfirmed, and it doesn't seem to ever been asked about in various interviews since. Yet this is not the last time in this series we will hear about him being difficult to work with. One person who was happy with Naka's management style was among the higher-ups at Sega. Al Nielsen had this to say.
The game probably could have been 3 times the size if we left in everything that was there. Naka and team really did a phenomenal job of editing what was going to be in the game, and weren't afraid to say, I've been working on this for 4 months. It's not working. Let's take it out. In a lot of games, this isn't going to happen. It was just great management of the project.
Not everything was grim, however. Yasushi Yamaguchi and level designer Hirokazu Yasuhara seemed to get on well with the Americans, as Craig stated in the same interview.
To be honest, we had good times and a lot of not so good times. I don't think there was a lot of learning going on for the most part. Yasuhara was an easy person to work with, and I never felt like he looked down on the Americans on the team. Yamaguchi was also easy to work with.
Back at the drawing board, Yasuhara's original vision was to have a world map, something like the first game's 8-bit version had. It was even planned that it would change visually as Sonic changed time itself. Yep, there was a time travel mechanic discussed early on. But such grand ideas were to be quickly dropped as the schedule shrank ever more tight. Now we're heading into the Mountains for Hilltop zone. It might look familiar to you, something like Emerald Hill but recolored, and you'd be right. Yamaguchi has confirmed this zone is the remains of when the time travel mechanic was still implemented. It reuses almost all its sprites from Emerald Hill. Of course, that's just smart development to do so. Saves space and a lot of time. And it's spaced far enough apart, it wouldn't be obvious in a normal playthrough. The zone presents itself like a postcard from an idealized mountain vacation. The kind travel agents show you when they want to sell you the concept of getting away from it all. Those lenticular clouds stretching into the horizon. Mountain peaks playing peekaboo through the mist. It's a sort of view that makes you understand why people climb mountains in the first place, even if most actual mountain climbing involves considerably fewer zip lines and significantly more gift shops. The scene is what I thought I'd have witnessed when my parents went on vacation to the mountains. But lo and behold, we were far below the clouds. Of course, it was still plenty beautiful and a breath of fresh air, like the cool palette being used for Hilltop. The zone arrives just like that cool mountain breeze. The colors shift from those warm Emerald Hill barks, chemical plant reds, and neon casinos to something altogether more green alpine. As if someone had finally remembered that not every video game needs to look like it was baked under a Mediterranean sun. A wonderful contrast in every way. Gina Ishiwatari handled graphics for this zone as well, and what a great artist she was. Also, the music is just fabuloso. It sets the scene for those mountain heights with a harmonica, and what I think are violin fiddles. And of course, it's also got that Mega Drive bass. Unlike every other stage in this game, Hilltop takes a more vertical approach. Being a mountain and all, you'll be doing a lot more spinballing through loops, drilling through the ground into volcanic caves. The seesaws from Sonic 1 fittingly also make a return here. Now with a flameless Gola, chilling on one side instead of a spiked ball. These can be bounced on multiple times to reach different routes and secret areas. These badniks are called souls in the Western Sonic 2 manuals, but they would go by Golas in future games everywhere. A dinosaur enemy also appears called Rexons, based on Paleosaurs. Those dinos could swim, but this one goes through lava. The most unique gimmick in Hilltop is the zip line pulley Sonic and Tails ride up to higher, or sometimes lower areas. This zone has such great flow. Despite what people say, Sonic was never about non-stop speed. There was platforming to be had in between, In every way, I just find this stage a great break in the pacing from the rest of the game. Interestingly, Act 1 is the only zone in the game without multiple paths. It's a set path to the end with only a single minor diversion available. A short act anyway, and Act 2 goes right back into the usual 3-zone routes. Each act even is punctuated with an action-packed chase scene. Like the first game, again with lava nipping at our tails, Act 1 is a surprisingly tight race to a door. I'd recommend grabbing the invincibility hidden above the entrance to this room, or it's much more difficult. Act 2 presents a vertical climbing challenge that would make Samus Aran feel right at home. Yet there is another hazard in 2. If you take the highest path, you'll get a unique earthquake section where the ground slowly rises upwards, requiring Sonic and Tails to move side to side and avoid getting crushed. Hilltop did not change much during development beyond minor refinements. A few lava pits removed and some platforms were added, but that's all. I guess they knew what they wanted. The boss of this zone is Robotnik in a submarine rising above the lava, and shooting some fire onto the platform closest to him. He can be easily beaten by endlessly bouncing on his head while he's above the lava. Just watch out though, cause you can fall right through him. The timing of the bounce isn't perfect to his invisibility frames. Of note here, my entire life I found it amusing how tiny Robotnik looks on this machine, like a playset figure, just not to scale at all with the rest of the game. This zone represents something of a breather in the game's pacing. Proof that even supersonic hedgehogs need to stop and smell the mountain air occasionally. It's a testament to good game design that even when borrowing assets and ideas from earlier zones, Hilltop manages to feel fresh and distinct, like a chill mountain breeze in a game that often runs hot. Mystic Cave is a rather divisive stage, though not as much as Metropolis Zone that we'll be seeing later. For some reason the US manual refers to the zone as an eerie forest, even though this is clearly a cavern. Robotnik's been digging for chaos emeralds in this eerie forest of flickering lights, glowworms and stinging centipedes. Hang on to the ivy to discover escape routes. There's a lot of stop and go here. As the manual hinted at, the common gimmick is needing to hang from switches made of ivy to bring down drawbridges that also work as platforms in some instances to higher paths. Momentum is further hindered by rock walls that slam up and down and rotating boxes. The boxes just have odd movement. They don't move around in a tight motion. It's spaced apart slightly to where Sonic and Tails can slip into the groove. I originally wrote up this script and even recorded it, talking about dying from them a lot. But I couldn't make it happen even when purposefully trying. I swear it happened as a kid. I guess like Labyrinth Zone's boss from Sonic 1, it's another personal Mandela effect. The zone's most notorious feature is an inescapable spike pit in Act 2. The sort of design choice that makes you wonder if someone on the development team had a particularly bad day. It's so perfectly cruel that if Supersonic falls in, you must wait for the ring counter to hit 0 just to escape. A bit like being stuck in a lift with elevator music playing, only much more spiky. Personally, I just view it as the game getting a bit more difficult now that we're at the halfway point. It's entirely possible to breeze right through this zone in subsequent runs. And as for the visuals, the walls shimmer with an almost organic purple hue, as if someone had taken the concept of cave moss and decided it needed to be significantly more dramatic. Scattered throughout the foreground are yellow-green cave walls that seem to have learned about photosynthesis through third-hand accounts, and honestly aren't trying very hard at it. The splotches of yellow and purple make me think they might be crystals, but either way make the whole affair another joy to gander upon. Yuji Naka shared, again in the Sonic Jam guidebook, that this was originally going to be haunted house themed.
The feel here is a haunted house, isn't it? But we ended up making a cave stave instead. When making this map, first we had drawn the island. There was a cave, there was a lake, a mountain, a construction site. We were thinking of all these areas, like Sonic would be here first, and then he'd go someplace else. That was part of the cave.
It certainly would have been interesting, though I suppose Mario already did that one. The boss for Mystic Cave is actually pretty interesting. Robotnik pilots the Egg Driller 2, now sporting 2 of said drills, which he uses to dig through the cave walls, causing an earthquake that makes debris fall. Watch out for the pointed bits, as those will make you lose those rings. In between bouts is predictably when Sonic can land those hits. It's a smart gimmick in my opinion. In all honesty, this is my least favorite stage, but it's still fine to play through, and that's saying a lot about the quality of Sonic 2. Even its worst stage is still rather enjoyable. Although it's divisive among fans, it's like complaining about getting the second slice of cake at a party. Sure, it might not be your first choice, but it's still cake. The special stages make a return here, but in an entirely new way. Sonic and Tails run in a fully 3D half-pipe, collecting rings and avoiding bombs. Alright, I know it's pseudo 3D, but damn if it doesn't look like real 3D. The goal in here is to collect the number of rings the floating text instructs you to. The number builds up for 3 rounds, after which, if you're successful, you're rewarded with a Chaos Emerald. Acquiring the number of rings quickly gets difficult. By the 3rd stage alone, the game asks you to get 60, 110, and then 160 rings. The distance you're able to see ahead is extremely limited. This essentially forces the player to memorize each zone because the bombs appear with little warning, and the character's movement is very sluggish when trying to move to the opposite side to grab rings. In addition, jumping is a huge commitment. The hang time is massive. If you're going for these, play as Sonic or Tails solo. The ring requirement is lower, and having the second character only adds more frustration as Tails has his own ring pool and will just run in the bombs. On the positive side, you potentially have many more chances to try for these emeralds, because special stages are now accessed by checkpoints. As a result of this, there is often only a couple star posts on the main path, and the rest are hidden high above or in other odd places. If you got at least 50 rings and touch a post, stars begin to circle above. Jump into them, and our heroes are whisked away to the 3D world. This means it's entirely possible to get all the emeralds before even finishing Emerald Hill. Your rings will be taken away after returning, but the game is very generous with them. To be honest, I'm not even sure I got past the 4th stage as a kid. Even today, I got hard stuck on the 3rd. Like I said in my Sonic 1 video, I'm not a fan of the series special stages ever. They're always my least favorite part of the games they appear in. On that note, I'd actually rather have Sonic 1 special zones back. At least it felt like they relied on some amount of skill. Tim Skelly and Peter Morwick, the men who handled all the modeling, also created the half-pipe graphics for these special worlds. Yamaguchi drew up the character sprites, and Sugano handled the stage design. An interesting tidbit, Tim shared an interview with another member of STI who made this possible.
Steve Uita, a programmer working on other projects at STI, recalled an interesting scheme that allowed us to do bitmap graphics with a character stamp-based system. That was the beginning. The background was conventional stamp-based artwork that I created, and the half-pipe I generated using 3D graphics. The system I had worked out could have done a full 360 vertical loop, but we ran out of space.
That 360 loop would later come to reality just over a decade later in Sonic Heroes, which has a very similar style of special stage. Your reward for collecting all 7 Chaos Emeralds this time, they added one more so Sonic could become Super Sonic, as a direct reference to the number of Dragon Balls and Super Saiyan transformation in Dragon Ball Z. Collect 50 rings in the stage, jump, and Sonic will turn bright yellow, become invincible, and jump higher. Honestly, while it's fun for a bit, this transformation quickly becomes annoying. It's just a fancy invincibility, and on top of it, the music changes to a single theme, so all you'll be hearing is that short loop over and over again, instead of Masato Nakamura's great stage compositions. It really bothers me to type so much negativity, but there isn't much to like about these beyond the graphics. You can't even use Supersonic in the Death Egg, which is the one place someone would really want to. None of it is worth the effort, except to see the true ending. At least special stages do get better in the 3rd game. Huh? Kids these days are crazy. Unfortunately, cuts were needed with the ultra-tight 9-month deadline looming ever closer. First out was the time travel storyline. It would just require too many zones and extra art to be made. Thus, many hit the chopping block. Secret Jungle, Ocean Wind, Blue Ocean, Tropical Sun. Madness Mountain, Cyber City, and Emerald Isle. These concept images come from a Beep 21 interview with Hirokazu Yasuhara. Most never made it past these concepts. Some like Rock World or Olympus were only mentioned within eternal documents, in the map sketch from the time travel storyline. Elements of certain other concepts obviously ended up in final stages. For example, Emerald Isle looks very much like Aquatic Ruins, and Madness Mountain's drawbridge looks like the ones in Mystic Cave, although one of these seems to have been revitalized when the third dimension arrived. Now for the first that made it past the concept stage is Desert Zone, which, as the name suggests, would be a desert theme. A mock-up shot can be seen in Mega UK's October 1992 issue. In this image, we can also see an unused gator badnik. The art for this stage was being handled by Brenda Ross, and it would have been repurposed for a winter stage, like Emerald Hill's graphics were for Hilltop. You can see another unused enemy here in a different screenshot, the Stegway, a Triceratops. Desert Zone would see something of a reimagining as Mirage Saloon decades later in Sonic Mania. Next is Wood Zone, which Brenda also worked on. This one actually does boot up in older prototypes, so we can get an idea of the team's intentions. It's more than a simple forest stage, with it actually taking place in the treetops. But first, I'm sure you're noticing Sonic's sprite is different. It's a lot closer to his look from Sonic 1, but touched up. It even included a more elaborate animation when coming to a hard stop. Sonic would pull back like he's turning around. Also, the music is an in-production version of Metropolis Zone. The leaves in the foreground and the vines wrapped around the guardrails gave nice atmosphere. Sonic would have also gone into these tunnels all through the trees, which is really neat. Things come to a dead end quickly, however, as Sonic is blocked from going up this ramp to the higher platform. What actually can happen is he slips through the wall and falls into the abyss. Thankfully, there is debug mode, which allows us to no-clip through the stage, where far above there is conveyor belts. We saw such hazards in Casino Night, and will again in Metropolis. The animation for it is running, but none of the physics have been implemented. To the left is a series of small platforms that also leads to a dead end, where below is the start. Way over a few thousand kilometers to the right is a couple small platforms where I assume the goal sign would be. Yamaguchi has shared that the reason for both these exclusions was due to the stages lacking a sense of speed. They gathered up the zones, and when deciding what would need to be cut, anything that would take away from Sonic's speed was to be thrown out. Based on some interviews with Brenda, Yamaguchi was also invested in these stages and was upset to see them get the axe. Before the next lost level, let's go over a bit what systems the artists used to craft their work. Sprite art was made on the Sega Digitizer System 3, a custom piece of hardware made by the company early on just for crafting sprites. On one screen would be the art program, and on the opposite the artist would set up what the sprites would look like in the finished game, and flip between animation frames. Most other art was produced on Amiga computers running a program called Deluxe Paint, an art program widely used in the industry at the time, even in other games, such as Monkey Island and Earthworm Jim. The other playable lost stage is Hidden Palace Zone, maybe the most famous lost level ever, even becoming the name for a wiki that documents lost content for video games. Craig Stitt worked on this zone. I love the depth on the rocks. They really feel 3D, and the background expanse with the waterfalls is beautiful. The dinosaur badniks called Reds became a fan favorite over the years. They were completely finished, but Craig was told by the team only currently living animals were allowed to be badniks. Of course, if that was true, why is there paleosaurs in Hilltop? I guess because it was in the past they were an exception? The other functional enemy here is some bats. It's more fleshed out compared to Wood Zone, but is far from complete. The stage's primary gimmicks appear to have been some pipes you could travel down, collapsing platforms, and these giant holes lined with green rails. I love the bridge that glows when stepped on. There's a section that looks like it should be a water ride, but no physics have been added. Sonic starts off going down a pipe and wrapping upwards with some ramps. Tails' AI isn't fully programmed, so he doesn't catch up. I also swear the hit detection on enemies is more wonky. There is a particularly difficult jump here with two platforms being perfectly aligned. I had to use debug mode after a couple tries missing, entering and exiting debug teleports Tails back, by the way. Shortly after that is a blind jump that leads to the Master Emerald. This brings us to the most important fact surrounding this stage. Hidden Palace was originally going to be an extra zone Sonic would come to after having acquired all the Chaos Emeralds. This is where he would fully gain the ability to go supersonic. Again, Yamaguchi was the one to elaborate on why this zone was cut.
This is the stage that Craig was in charge of after Oil Ocean Zone. The graphics were good and the map was halfway done, but the gimmicks hadn't been finalized and the idea for the boss hadn't been decided upon yet. The project was pretty far into the final stage. So at that stage, the programmer asked us to do something about the schedule. When I created the stage, I was asked to select the flow from Sky Chase to Death Egg, and there was no time to create the boss, so I had no choice but to cancel the stage. From the graphics side, I really wanted to keep this stage. Still, it was a difficult choice because the game would be bad if it didn't have an ending.
In the end, the number of zones was cut from 18 to 11, and the ones in development that got the axe turned out to be from American staff. Craig Stitt commented on this.
I remember a lot of angry artists finding out their levels had been cut. I was one of the lucky American artists that actually got any of their levels put in Sonic 2. Looking back at it, I'm not sure if I wasn't the only American to end up with any levels in Sonic 2.
Sad as it is, it does seem like Craig really was the only one in the end to get a stage in the game. Whoa, time travel is a hoot! Yeah, it's modern, Krator, and it's now the year 2013. Why is that? It's because that's the year the official Sonic 2 remaster by Christian Whitehead and Simon Tomley came out, and held within was the most infamous lost level fully realized, Hidden Palace Zone. I'll be playing the version within Sonic Origins because it's easier to access. Alright, fine. That makes it the year 2022. Whatever. Give me a break. As you saw earlier when my past self mysteriously fell into that pit in Mystic Cave, it had no spikes. This is the secret entrance to Hidden Palace in the remake. Right away, it just feels amazing to be standing in this place after so long. Hidden Palace existed in that peculiar space between myth and reality. Like Bigfoot with clear photos, or the Loch Ness Monster with better documentation. For 21 years, it existed only in screenshots and unfinished ROM dumps. A digital Flying Dutchman that players could glimpse but never reach. Then, like a time capsule being unearthed by particularly dedicated archaeological hedgehogs, it finally emerged. After 21 years, those elusive waterfalls and sparkling crystals were set free. And in 16.9 to boot. Right away, the familiar drop lined with green rails is there to descend into. And this time, not to Sonic's death. The purple diamonds have been expanded in the background, and the bridge still glows when walked on. The team stayed so true to the original sprite set. It's amazing. It's difficult to even tell what they added. Everything is so tastefully done. Also, of course, the T-Rex Badnik Reds is here, along with the annoying bats. Stegway the Triceratops even appears. Let's give kudos to where the team added new elements. There's new platforms that move in a circle and extend out at certain points, making players time their jumps just right. Down below is a brand new underwater section with jellyfish badniks that grab Sonic. Tapping left and right will set him free. Or Tails can if he feels like it. Oh yeah, Tails can carry Sonic in this version, just not underwater. The song is the original music for this stage from the beta, but my mind just has a difficult time not relating this track to Fox's rendition for the fan game before the sequel. I've heard it so much from listening to the OST over the years. The song is called Ice and Fire in that game, by the way, and is what you're hearing in the background. There is debate on exactly what track was going to be used for the music at Hidden Palace. There's a slow, unused track left in the game that can be played in sound test. I don't know what may be true, but this second option, what became Mystic Cave's two-player mode song, i.e., the one that actually played in the beta, was the best choice to use in my humble opinion. It's been touched up here to flow better. Christian and Simon's expansion of the original level design shows the kind of careful consideration usually reserved for restorations of Renaissance paintings, rather than attempting to reconstruct the unfinished beta layout which, like most unfinished things, had all the coherence of a fever dream. They created something new that pays homage to the original. That was for the best, at least in this rabbit's opinion. The new decor blends in seamlessly. There are times I had to go back and forth to double check what was new or not, like these red spiked balls. Also, the Master Emerald can now be broken. No wonder Knuckles will be in such a poor mood come Sonic 3. There's a fresh boss, the Brass Egg. Robotnik flies above, just out of reach, with a pipe organ behind him. If you try and attack, you'll only take damage from the flame underneath. The flame does not hurt the duo at any other stage. Every so often he blasts his trombone that, like in Mystic Cave, shakes the stage raining down debris. This time, instead of sharp points, these red spiked orbs come down. After a bit, the water rises and they explode. The second time Robotnik rattles the palace, a huge red ball falls. This one follows Sonic, and when it explodes, it creates a geyser. If you pay attention, you'll notice Robotnik also follows Sonic and Tails. The goal is to line him up when the geyser erupts. This knocks him down and leaves him open to attack. It's a unique bit of a puzzle element. I actually like it. Hidden Palace Zone proves that some things are worth waiting for, even if that wait happens to be old enough to drink in most countries. Hey, I saw you peeking. I wasn't going to spoil the tier list. Well then, back to the past I go. See you there. Oil Ocean brings us the second most iconic stage after Casino Night, and really the only one that has stayed unique to 2. Beyond getting remixed in Sonic Mania for the 25th anniversary, this stage theme has never been reused to this day. Oil Desert would be the closest to it in Sonic 4, but that a desert, and again, was made as a direct reference. This zone is absolutely gorgeous, with the deep orange sunset over the horizon, the silhouette of towering smokestacks taking on a dark bronze gold. It's so imposing, but so goddamn beautiful. The sun is even boiling. The oil pours from the factory further in, creating a polluted sea below Sonic and Tails. On top of all this, the stage itself we trek on is composed of pipes and tanks moving the oil along. Yes, brilliant. This is storytelling, folks. So much is being shown about what Robotnik is doing to the land. This is how you tell story through stage design. The zone's creation has an interesting pedigree. It was one of Craig Stitt's contributions from the American team, inspired by San Francisco's Golden Gate Bridge and the large natural gas storage tanks near its base. He aimed for a cross between the said famous bridge and an oil refinery. Seems to be a rare case of the American team's work making it into the game. However, like many things that look impressive in photographs, the actual experience of visiting can be somewhat less enchanting. When I looked online, I was shocked to see how much people appear to hate this stage. It seemed to be an even more overwhelming and collective distaste for it than the infamous Metropolis. And after playing the zone with this in mind, I can see why. I was originally going to try and defend this by saying the difficulty is ramping up late into the game. But this isn't the right kind of difficulty. It doesn't feel designed in a fair way, and the biggest offender is the few blind jumps. And they come while jumping off these collapsing overhangs. Sonic isn't just leaping towards a solid platform either. It's onto these fans, you can't see them to time the jump beforehand. This situation really made me step back and think. Specifically, think as a person who hasn't played this probably 100 times since childhood. It's just not great game design, even if being able to jump out of the oil takes off the edge. Mix that with seahorses and octopuses hiding behind foreground objects or just off screen shooting pellets, and there is just a whole lot of memorization needed to navigate this place without constantly losing rings. Now I do think the oil slides are fun, even if it bothers me I can't backtrack. Yeah, even then. That has an issue, doesn't it? These steam vents that shoot their cap into the air are super cool. Lets the player really appreciate the sky, and provides interesting vertical navigation. One interesting thing of note is while in beta, Robotnik's Wrecking Ball from the first game was going to be used for some kind of purpose. Sonic was able to walk on top of it, a feature that was planned for the original game as well. What purpose it would have served, no one knows for sure. Maybe it would have been able to float on the oil and give Sonic an easier jump out. As sad as it is to say, the boss is even worse than the zone itself, mostly due to how much it makes the player wait around. Robotnik starts by poking his head at the oil in his submarine. You can get a whack or two in before he descends. Okay, fine, a boss you can't really bounce on to death. After that, a spiked tentacle flies over the side you're standing on, and another arm comes up with a laser and will very slowly shoot a few times. The easiest way to avoid it all is just standing in the oil underneath and mashing jump. It all adds up to extended periods of time of nothing happening. The entire boss is just a bunch of waiting around. The zone's sinking pool mechanic proved interesting enough to be reused in Sonic 3's Marble Garden zone, though in a much less expansive implementation. This perhaps best summarizes Oil Ocean Zone as a whole, full of interesting ideas that don't quite come together as intended. Yet I still give it the edge over Mystic Cave due to the gorgeous visuals. I'm not saying it works objectively, but to me it's still a pretty decent time. Now, finally, for the most infamous of zones among the fanbase, Metropolis. It's Robotnik's huge fortress, a mechanical maze that somehow manages to be both impressive and infuriating, like a Swiss watch designed by someone with a grudge against time itself. It does delight with some cool 3D effects featuring rolling cages the characters turn in circles while running through, similar to the corkscrews in Emerald Hill. Also, these giant nuts Sonic and Tails run on to go up and down. This is actually another zone by an American. Tom Payne took charge of this one. The enemy placement within these acts is particularly diabolical, often waiting at the top of ramps or just on the other side of platforms. There's the Slicers, praying mantis robots whose thrown scythes follow Tails with all the persistence of a debt collector. Defeating them makes the projectile disappear. Shell Crackers are a crab with a big claw that can extend to punch Sonic. The tricky thing about them is it looks like you can just jump on top, but you will only end up losing your rings. It's possible to roll into their back, but they are best off just being jumped over and ignored completely. The final type, the Asterons, a starfish-type enemy that shoots spikes, are the top complaint among fans due to often being placed along the paths the screws are on. So when Sonic and Tails are riding the nuts, they go off sending spikes all over that you're required to either time a jump between or get hit and fall all the way down. These badniks are always positioned where they can't be reached, because apparently fair play wasn't in Robotnik's engineering manual this time, though I doubt they could be jumped on as they are spiky. When playing as Sonic alone, it's not a big deal, just run and everything is calm. However, most, including myself, just hit start and play as Sonic with Tails, and why wouldn't we? It's a cool feature. The issue with Tails is, even alone, is that his sprite is bigger and triggers the Asterons to explode. Poor Foxboy just can't get a break in this game. Unlike Oil Ocean, I just don't really see what there is to hate so much about this zone. It's essentially the penultimate stage. Why wouldn't the enemy placement be more difficult? Why wouldn't there be more traps? Why wouldn't the platforming be tricky? It's not all perfect, but is not nearly as unfair as Oil Ocean with the foreground objects hiding seahorses shooting pellets. Using the skills the game taught and being a bit more careful goes a long way. Sonic is a platformer. It shouldn't all be about the spectacle of speed. It's a feature that adds flavor. If you don't like the zone, that's fine. Opinions are opinions. I just don't think being difficult alone is an objective fault. I'm not even saying I adore it like Hilltop or Chemical Plant, but it's pretty good. It has neat variety with gears to climb on, small platforms attached to belts, buttons to bring out overhangs, crushes to avoid. And a really unique quirk of Metropolis is the stage actually loops vertically. You can keep going up and down forever. If you so wish, it's possible to explore the entire zone this way. There's also these yellow springs that launch Sonic sideways. I ended up, of all things to happen, getting soft-locked on a set of these yellow side bumpers. It actually brought back a memory. This happened to me tens of thousands of years ago, when I was a kid and ended up shutting off the console. Of course, nowadays I remember it's possible to time out. There is no way to control Sonic when bouncing between these spring pads. Holding jump will launch him higher is all. but for some reason he can't get out of the animation to land on that slope you assume he could, so nothing to do but turn it off or wait out the 10-minute timer. Don't jump into these near the end of Act 1. There is also other weird interactions with these springs. If Sonic or Tails take damage and then land on these, they freeze. No animation plays, and you lose what little control you had until they land and reset. The speed tubes from Scrap Brain and Sonic 1 also make a return here. There is quite a bit known about Metropolis thanks to artist Tom Payne sharing tons of concept art. It was going to have more of a steampunk theme originally. The most interesting fact, however, is the reason it has 3 acts. Yuji Naka hinted at this reason once.
Due to problems with the story, Act 3 was going to be a different zone that would only appear once. But since it was cut, we still wanted to have something after Act 2. So that's why there are 3 acts in this one. We had already finished the map, and it would have been a shame to waste it. So this is what we went with.
Also, being the penultimate stage, it adds a bit of drama and tension. If you already don't like the zone, I can see why adding an extra act would only make things worse. It must feel like less of an epic challenge and more like being forced to eat 3 portions of a meal you didn't enjoy the first time. It's speculated the stage layout was reused from a zone called Genocide City. Quite the name, huh? It was later adjusted to Cyber City. But remember it was mentioned earlier in the Lost Levels list? Tom Payne in an interview at Sonic Amateur Expo 2019 said this when asked about a possible connection.
There wasn't enough time to do the Genocide City, so Yasuhara combined some elements into Metropolis Level 3, I think.
Later on, more design documents have come out that confirm the Genocide City would have had 3 acts just like Metropolis does. Further, there is a few gimmicks they both share like conveyor belts. And finally, the boss of this stage is odd. Robotnik this time is piloting the Egg Mobile while surrounded by some orbs. You have to hit them and avoid these spheres, and when you do, you'll find out these are actually balloons of himself. You might need to brute force the first hit or 2 with ring abuse. When the balloon is out, he flies out of reach up top until Sonic or Tails pops it. After that, he starts to fly back down, which lets you freely hit him from underneath. You can essentially stun lock him this way with good enough timing. Once all the balloons are taken out, he will try and go to the side and fire lasers. Most likely the player will just hit him again before he can even start shooting. We will see this boss remixed a couple times in future games. For me at least, Metropolis Zone exists in a peculiar space. So many wild emotions get thrown around about it. Yet I'm completely stuck in the middle. I just think it's alright. It's impossible to deny its impact on players, whether they're celebrating their mastery or throwing their controllers across the room. With the final cuts made, development was thrown into overdrive. Sega flew out a team of 13 additional Japanese employees to help put the finishing touches on the game, only a few weeks before the release date. An army of 50 testing stations were set up running 24/7 to meticulously test the game for any bugs or final adjustments. Late in development, Mark Cerny left the team, reportedly due to how the American staff was mistreated, though it's never been officially stated why. Still, one final crisis would strike the development team at the last minute. The game's size was too big for Sega's cartridges. Masaharu Yoshi, a businessman at Sega who took over after Cerny's sudden departure, shared how this was solved.
Actually, we ran out of ROM space right before Sonic 2 was supposed to be finished. At first, we were going to use two 2MB ROMs for a total of 4 megabytes, but in the end, we added another ROM for a total of 8 megabytes. My role was to ensure the development team was making good progress. One day, Yuji Naka came to me and said, "The data won't all fit." The problem was that if we increased the ROM size, then the cost would also go up. But if we tried to tweak everything to make it fit in 4 megabytes, then it would add an excessive 2 or 3 more weeks to development time. I was really at a loss for what to do, so I went begging to the Japanese side for help. I sent a fax from America to Sega President Hayao Nakayama. Nakayama made the decision. "That's okay. Release it as it is. It'd be a waste to spend time reducing the size now." So we increased the ROM size to 8 megabytes and released it.
At the same time, Sega of America's Director of Global Marketing, Al Nielsen, began the $10 million Sonic Tuesday marketing blitz. The plan was to have a worldwide release, a first for the gaming industry. instead of games showing up at seemingly random intervals over months. Sonic 2 would have a set date people could show up to purchase, and these dates weren't chosen at random. It would first hit Japan on Saturday, November 21st, 1992, only a couple of days before the national holiday, Kinro Kansha no Hi, or Labor Thanksgiving Day in English. A day to honor labor workers, but more importantly for Sega, it created a 3-day weekend, perfect for people to come pick up a hot new game. Europe and America would get the game a few days later on Tuesday, November 24th. In America, this was just a few days before Thanksgiving, and most relevant, Black Friday, the day when the Christmas shopping frenzy begins. Also, the Tuesday release would be best for businesses. The game can ship over the weekend and allow the employees to fully stock up on Monday in preparation for Tuesday. No matter where people went, they'd see t-shirts, decals, posters, commercials, and even entire buses wrapped with Sonic's face. Tom Kalinske, Sega of America's CEO, personally put his hands on the first shipments from Japan, and special stickers were slapped on trucks as the distribution began. Now, for the second auto-scrolling level in the series, Sky Chase. Remember, the first one was Bridge Zone Act 2 in Sonic 1 8-bit. But more importantly, this is the debut of what would become a series staple, the biplane chase sequence. This zone serves as a nice, relaxing break after the Metropolis marathon, and before the grand climax. Tails will handle the driving for now, or Sonic if you're playing Tails. So sit back and whoa! Yeah, it's not quite that calm. The badniks come to you now. Sonic can jump on them and press up and down to move the aircraft. Just be aware it's possible to spin dash or just move too fast and fall off the plane. This was fixed when Sonic 2 was included in the Sonic Classics set, along with the first game and Mean Bean Machine. The music is even pretty chill. For me, this is the first song I think about when Sonic 2 comes to mind. The second, of course, being Hilltop. It's a nice change of pace, yet you know the tension is building as the heroes give pursuit to Robotnik's flying fortress. The flyby of the airship is extremely impressive and even a bit intimidating. This zone was added very late in development, not appearing in any of the early builds. The stage as a whole barely lasts 2 minutes, but it's an important little diversion. Time for the real challenge of the game, Wing Fortress Zone. It feels like a true battleground, with fans throwing our heroes around, tight platforming, and chickens firing torrents. It sets the mood right, with it feeling like a struggle to breach Robotnik's final defenses. Sonic just makes the jump as the biplane is shot down. Tails doesn't follow here, and neither does Sonic if you're playing Tails. This stage will demand all of your attention and abilities. Right at the start, it throws you a trap card, with a speed launcher that will heave Sonic right off the stage if you're not ready for it. This is followed by a series of hanging bars located with the sort of precision that suggests the architect had a particular vendetta against small mammals. The bars provide exactly enough horizontal movement to make each jump feel like a calculated risk, rather than a certainty. I think if grabbed by the direct middle, it's actually impossible to land on either platform. From there, it's a climb up through large fans and past clucker badniks. The scale of the airship is astounding. More than any other zone, there is a constant reminder you're making progress while moving around the vessel. Always brand new sections to see that are unique. Giant wings with engines attached, running above the decks, traversing the cargo area. Sonic even gets thrown out and has to hold on to the side for dear life. This zone is the only time this animation is used in the game, as if the developers saved it specifically for this moment for maximum dramatic effect. The amount of planning that would go into this I assume would be massive, yet it appears this is one of the last zones to be added to the game, and due to that it wasn't quite finished. There's a trio of ring boxes just hanging out in the sky, and a conveyor belt that doesn't move. These stand as a testament to the development team's race against time to be done before 540. And those speed launchers I mentioned earlier, they don't work like boosters. What it actually does is sling Sonic or Tails through the air a certain distance, in a display of physics that would make Newton reach for a stiff drink. If you keep holding a direction, it will, for some reason, cancel out any momentum you previously had and throw you short into the abyss below. Becomes a huge issue halfway through where one needs to be used to cross the gap. Somehow I still make the same mistake to this day and die at least once per run. This was where I got stuck as a kid. It took me, I think, until my family got the internet to find out the mistake I was making. All my lives fell out of the sky over and over and over again. The boss of this zone is unique to say the least. It's the egg barrier. Robotnik traps Sonic or Tails in a room with a giant laser that moves back and forth, eventually sending out a big beam. Those tiny floating platforms are used to get up high and whack it. Just be careful of the spikes. It's a surprisingly straightforward challenge for this late in the game, though one suspects the development team might have been saving their energy for what was to come. The concept would be reused again in Sonic 3 and Knuckles actually. The sequence ends with a kind of dramatic flair usually reserved for summer blockbusters. Tails swooping in for a last-minute rescue with a new jet engine attached to the tornado. The fortress erupts around them, leading to Sonic making one final desperate leap onto Robotnik's escaping spacecraft. It's a sort of scene that makes you forget about all those deaths by speed launcher, rather like how the view from a mountain makes you forget about the climb. Now it's time to finish the fight. Death Egg Zone stands as the ultimate test of player skill, or perhaps patience depending on how many times you've had to restart from Mecha Sonic. It's a ringless boss rush that feels like being invited to a boxing match and having someone steal your gloves on the way in. First up is Mecha Sonic, who descends from above in a fittingly dramatic fashion. His design is particularly striking, those saw-like metallic spines spinning on his back, taunting his rival, or trying to intimidate Tails if you're playing him, I guess. The black sclera eyes staring into your being, and segmented armor that splits at the elbows like some sort of robotic origami. According to Yamaguchi, the design drew inspiration from Gigan and Mechagodzilla. Upon hearing this, I can see it. Mechagodzilla has the spines coming out in a similar pattern, and Gigan's red eye presents in a familiar way. In contrast, his moveset is far more simple. He can boost using his rocket shoes across the ground. This is easily countered with a spin dash as it passes through him during this. Mecha Sonic has his own spin dash as well, which can either be used along the ground or in an arc, and that's it. If the fight goes on long enough, he will start releasing arrows during the spin dash. As it turns out, this fight was not finished. He was meant to have homing missiles, lasers, and a gravity smashed out of absorb rings if Sonic was too close. That last point does tell us something else. There was going to be rings originally, so removing them was likely a last-minute choice to artificially boost the difficulty. But also, since he was absorbing rings, that means it was most certainly a fight as Supersonic, since absorbing them would be most effective against that form, as the ring counter becomes important. I do commend putting Robotnik in the background on the screen reacting every time Mecha Sonic takes damage, providing a sort of Greek chorus to the proceedings. You know, I always called him Silver Sonic as a kid, but that's the name of the robot Sonic in the 8-bit edition. Upon defeat, Robotnik runs away and, like the first game, proves he is faster than the blue blur. He hops into his giant mech, the Death Egg robot, though I prefer Robo Eggman as it's called in the Sonic Jam guide. This fight is extremely difficult when you don't know what to do. He doesn't attack in any real way. The robot's arms come forward with the spiked fingers as he walks. Sonic and Tails can get above them just at the peak of their jump for a hit. It's difficult to do, and the hitbox is a bit finicky on top of it. All of this is made worse if you're playing as Knuckles with his shorter jump. But that's a story for another day. The safest time to hit the body is when the arms are directly at his sides during the passing position, the peak of his walk cycle. A couple of hits can also be scored easily when he's getting ready to fly off. When off-screen, a reticle will appear. Getting stepped on isn't good, so Sonic will want to get out of the way. Landing somewhere towards the middle is better. Being cornered will be very bad as he shoots his fists out at Sonic. Getting some distance will make it easier to react. And should you find yourself behind the mechanical menace, those egg bombs ensure you'll regret your life choices rather quickly. If you die, it's right back to before Mecha Sonic. Ouch. Brutal. A checkpoint would have been nice. This cycle will continue till 12 hits are landed. Yeah, not 8. Another 4 are needed for this big boy. When he goes down, as is customary, the entire place begins to explode as Sonic races to the exit. Tails and the freed animals look up as the spaceship explodes. He hops in the biplane and heads off just in time to catch Sonic again, or vice versa if you're playing Tails. Victory music plays as Flickies join them, and they make a big turn to strike a pose. Despite the intense pressure and a tight deadline, the development concluded with a celebration. Both Japanese and American members side by side celebrated the game's completion only a single day before release. Differences set aside for this moment, the game was done and shipped. And that brings us back to today, Tuesday, November 24th, 1992, Sonic Tuesday. The result of this marketing blitz was staggering. The game was a smash hit, and would influence the entire industry to have Tuesday releases, which still often is the case even to this very day. But how did it fare in reviews? Let's take a look, shall we? We'll start with GamePro in the USA, their January 1993 issue. They were thoroughly impressed, saying Sonic 2's zones are packed with imaginative and original new scenery. If you thought you saw it all in Sonic the Hedgehog, you ain't seen nothing yet. Following was, Sonic 2's graphics are better than the originals. However, they think the music isn't quite as impressive, going so far to describe it as tinny. Their other disappointment was the difficulty, writing, it's just not tough enough, but we're happy with the scale of the zones. Finishing with, the best thing about Sonic 2 is that it's just plain fun, and that we can't wait to see what Sonic's gonna do on the CD. It earned a score of 3 3/4 soy faces out of 4, a near perfect score. Also, there is this really goofy drawing of Tails on the following page. You gotta love it. Not everyone was satisfied with this sequel. UK's Games Master magazine by far had the lowest score. It was entirely about the difficulty being too low, which they mentioned time and time again throughout the review. I can't help but feel there will be a lot of disappointed kids this Christmas. This is a case of more of the same. The first one looked nice, and so does this. The first was dead easy to complete, and so is this. There's just no challenge involved in Sonic 2, so it becomes a bore and a real letdown. The one feature they did praise was a 2-player mode. It's all very hip to brag, how you've completed a certain zone in 8 seconds, but you have the option to compete against your equally boastful mates. They gave it a mere score of 65%, finishing with a note. Technical excellence alone, which Sonic undeniably has in spades, does not a good game make. Think carefully before you buy. When people wonder why older games tended to be brutal in nature, this is a large reason why. More than a few people just loved it. Things fared better with Famitsu in Japan, where it got 2 7s and 2 8s. One reviewer thought of it as only a minor change, though fans who were waiting for the sequel might cry tears of joy. Another had lots of fun. While the sense of speed is slightly dulled, the excitement and tension is doubled. No, maybe even quadrupled. Multiple reviewers found the 2-player mode a great idea, but said the characters are too small to see. Yet the most wild comment was from the third reviewer who said, "It's a shame Tails isn't cute." Insane. Their appeal to the Japanese still didn't work. Finally, I can't leave our brothers in Brazil out. A Cow Games December 1992 issue mostly featured a guide, but had a couple paragraphs comprising a review, and it was nothing but gushing. Incredible! Sonic 2 is a breathtaking adventure that will leave anyone breathless. Its more than 20 stages are long, with vertical and horizontal scrolls. The loops are back, enormous and in greater numbers. There's even a double loop, where you have to fly low to avoid falling. Beautiful and highly detailed graphics. Strong and varied music, including an orchestra on the final stage. In increasing difficulty. That alone would be enough to make any game a hit. But Sonic 2 is so good, it's unbelievable. And the best part? Robotnik escapes in the end, for those who understand. Half a word is enough. Sonic 3 is coming. The praise can't get higher than that. As you'd expect, it finished with a score of 4 very excited joysticks out of 4. A perfect score. And what happened to our developers at the Technical Institute? With such chaos and friction, more than a few left, or went their separate ways within Sega. As mentioned before, Mark Cerny became so distraught with the situation he ended up leaving STI during development. he found his way to the, at the time, newly formed Crystal Dynamics, where he worked on 3DO games. This naturally would be short-lived. In 1994, he moved to Universal Studios, where he worked as a producer, managing the development of Crash and Spyro for the PlayStation. In 98, he started the company Cerny Games, where he has continued to work with Sony as a lead architect to this very day. But not everyone walked away unhappy. Artist Tom Payne cherished the memories.
I got on very well with all the Sonic team, but I don't think in general the Americans measured up very well with the Japanese team. I mean, Yamaguchi would be there all the time working, and we would go home and sleep. No, really. There was some weirdness later on, but for me it was pretty great to work with them all. It was like getting a chance to play guitar with the Beatles. I have some pictures of all of us in New York for Sonic Tuesday, and we had a grand time.
Peter Moravec, the other 3D artist if you recall, summed up the situation best.
There was a language barrier, and not everyone chose to mingle. But most of the Japanese team members were very friendly. From what I gathered, and later on experienced firsthand, the main issue was Naka's sense of ownership over Sonic and his perfectionism. The Westerners had difficulties matching the art style and coding practices of the Japanese, as well as their work ethic. Many of those guys would routinely pull overnighters, sleeping on the floor in their cubicles. Also, to be quite honest, there was disparity in skill levels. The Sonic team were Sega's top developers, while many of STI's hires were talented kids with no prior experience, myself included. So, after Sonic 2 shipped, Naka pulled the plug. It would have been nice if he gave the experiment more time, but I also know how it is when you have a big title to deliver under tight deadlines, so no judgment.
And as for Yuji Naka, he really did not like working with the American side, and this led to the teams completely separating for the rest of STI's existence. A clear divide between the Japanese team and the American team. While there would be a little crossover going forward, Sonic 3 and Knuckles would be an almost entirely Japanese creation. Yet this is not the last we'll be hearing of the American side. The story of Sega Technical Institute is far from over. Craig Stitt, Brenda Cook, and Peter Moravec, along with a few others, would stay on for Sonic Spinball, where some lost art will even get reused. However, Tim Skelly would leave STI after Sonic 2 and go on to work at Incredible Technologies, where he would contribute art to the Golden Tee series of golf games. Sadly, he has since passed away on March 2nd, 2020. Despite all the challenges that surrounded its development, Sonic 2 would go on to be one of the best-selling games of the 16-bit era, moving 5 million copies worldwide in 1992 alone. And I've seen figures ranging from 6 million to 7.5 million throughout the 16-bit console's lifecycle. Its success proved that Sega could compete with Nintendo at the highest level. While its development story showed both the costs and rewards of pushing boundaries, the game's influence extends far beyond its 6 million copies sold. It changed how games were marketed and released. While Sonic would go on to star in countless more adventures, it was here, in this perfect storm of creativity and chaos, that the Blue Blur truly found his stride. And really, there is so much more that could potentially be mentioned and discussed. Chemical Plant City used to be pink. Yuji Naka said that a prototype was stolen while at a trade show. The cartridge was going to have a holographic label at one point. Genocide City would have had anti-gravity mechanics. The cheat codes correspond to dates. A mysterious demo track by David Javalosa that may or may not have even been meant for Sonic 2, then trying to connect what lost level concept would have gone where. It's damn near endless. The impact this game had is staggering, far beyond the gaming market. It had a large part in inspiring people to explore development history and preservation. There is forum threads online that continue to this day, discussing the nuances and finding bits and pieces of the past. I'll leave such coverage for someone to make an iceberg video on, as this doesn't suit the structure of a retrospective. And now, it's finally time for where to place this game on the tier list. The new physics greatly enhanced the feeling of speed. The spin dash fundamentally changed how zones could be designed, enabling instant acceleration and vertical exploration. The introduction of Tails can't be understated, as Sonic's most loyal partner and master mechanic. While the player couldn't utilize his flight ability, he was the key to inspiring new ways of gameplay going beyond simple speed throughout the series. The The zones expand beyond the first entry in both visuals and gameplay, from the crumbling pillars of Aquatic Ruins to the slot machines of Casino Night. There was all kinds of new gimmicks to keep this fresh. While Oil Ocean as a slog and Wing Fortress into the Death Egg was left a bit unfinished for the finale. Technical achievements like the 3D corkscrews shine bright, though the notorious special stages marred by trial and error memorization and poor depth perception makes one wish for something more simple. I think it fits perfectly into the A tier. While not quite reaching the S tier, it's astounding what the fine folks at STI managed to achieve on such a tight schedule. A magical, chaotic creativity led to a cultural impact that we still feel today. A near flawless game that set the blueprint for the franchise leaves this sequel with a most impressive legacy. Hey there, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please consider leaving a like, subscribing for more, dropping a comment, and maybe even ring that bell. It really means a lot that you made it this far. Also, big thanks to my Patreons, Retro Vistage and Undercover Squirrel. You dudes are amazing, and thank you so much for your patience. Also, thanks to everyone who stepped up and did some quote readings for this episode. That contrast is really needed. Holy crap, this was quite the video to make. By far my longest one yet. Sonic 2 is a game with a big history, and there was so much info to parse through, so many rumors, digging through forums, trying to separate the fact from the fiction. It was like my younger self exploring the lore of Sonic all over again. I decided to go all in on the animation this time, and had to scale back some of my plans in the end. Otherwise, it'd have taken like 6 months to make. On the bright side, my very first video Sonic 1 took about the same amount of time as this did, and that had way less going on in it. So I've def made some progress. My very next video will for sure be something shorter, probably the next pinball entry. I also got plans to cover stuff like Pokemon Yellow, Wind Waker, Final Fantasy XIII, Smash Brothers. There's a ton of options out there. Who knows what'll happen? Let me know in the comments if any of those stand out to you. But what I can tell you for sure is that next time in this complete Sonic retrospective series, our bits will be going 8, with Sonic 2 from the Master System and Game Gear.